The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Yeah! When music sounded so good like this, fabulous. Time to show, it's your time.
Good day, and welcome to the Washington Report. I'm Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and I'm blessed to serve as the Virgin Islands delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. The Washington Report was created to inform Virgin Islanders on current federal issues that directly affect our community. I'm tremendously honored to have as my guest today Speaker Emeriti Nancy Pelosi. For more than 30 years, Speaker Pelosi has represented the area of San Francisco in the U.S. House of Representatives. She served as the 52nd Speaker of the House of Representatives and made history in 2007 when she was elected the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House. She was elected again as Speaker in 2019, the first person to do so in more than 6 decades. Speaker Pelosi led the way in the creation of generation-defining legislation under 2 Democratic administrations, including the Affordable Care Act and the American Rescue Plan, among many other distinctions and accomplishments. She has been a longtime friend of the Virgin Islands and has provided invaluable support for measures that directly affect the Virgin Islands and the territories countless times. Welcome to the Washington Report, Speaker Pelosi.
My honor to be here with you, and congratulations to the people of the Virgin Islands for having such a wonderful representative in Congress.
Thank you, thank you. I'm really grateful that you've taken out some time to spend with us. Virgin Islanders watch this on our public television station, and I know that your schedule is incredibly busy. So we're grateful that many people oftentimes forget about us in the Virgin Islands, but you again and again make sure that the territories are included, that we're treated equitably, that we have the resources that we need, and you recognize us as American citizens. So thank you for that honor and for sharing some time with us. So as I mentioned, you have provided tremendous support to the people of the Virgin Islands. And back in 2017, after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, you came down to both Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands with a team of people to see the impact of the storms and to make an assessment for yourself what needed to be done. What can you tell us about your thought process in going down? And I know you've been through many recovery processes and been to many hurricanes. What were your thoughts?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on this subject. First of all, let me just say that our office has had a connection to the territories for a long time. My predecessor, Philip Burton, as the chair of the subcommittee on Interior, Natural Resources Committee then, again, was the author of legislation respecting and valuing the contribution that the territories make to our country, both in terms of diversity, in terms of just being American.
Right.
Many people when I've been to the Virgin Islands, not at the time of disaster, but just to visit, I've met many of the veterans who have served our country. And so it's not just about territorial issues, which are significant and different, and that you have spelled out very clearly to us, but also our veterans and so many other the needs as American citizens that people have there, and hopefully to be citizens who are there.
Right.
So when I was there, it was interesting. Again, I was there on my honeymoon, so I know how beautiful it is, going back many years, but also on other occasions when we could just hear what people had to say in the normal course of events. In the time of a natural disaster, of course, the needs are so great. So the high cost of energy, which are there anyway, are exacerbated because of that. When I was there on the visit you mentioned, remember we went up into the countryside and saw trees blocking
Yes.
highways and roads and cutting
Yes.
off food supply and the rest.
Yes.
So your leadership in terms of representing the needs of the people of the Virgin Islands was very, very important to us. And as I said, they're blessed to have you as a delegate because of the respect that you command in the Congress. Whether it was now as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, I don't know that any territorial representative ever
It's never been before.
Never been
right.
before. But your predecessor,
Donna Christensen.
she was on Energy and Commerce.
Yes.
And when I did that, they said, "Oh, you can't do that." And I said, "No, I can." And then that paved the way for you to be on that. So that there was no obstacle to your participation on committees of jurisdiction of consequence. While you don't have a vote on the floor, we hope to change that. In committee, you make a tremendous, tremendous difference. And that's why, recognizing the respect that you command, I was honored to appoint you as a manager in the impeachment, and you just,
You had an amazing team
yeah,
under
you
your
did.
leadership.
And that was recognized in the country. So thank you to the people of the Virgin Islands for blessing us with your service. Here's the thing about when a natural disaster strikes. We have these laws, the Stafford Act and the rest of that, that says, yes, we will bring in funds, but we want to see matching funds from the community. Well, the community is not in a position to do that.
Right.
So one of the things that we wanted to do is make a change to how FEMA would come through with the money that we have said is for natural disasters without requiring the fullest participation that is impossible. I'm not just talking about the Virgin Islands, I'm talking about Galveston, I'm talking about Iowa when the floods, all around the country. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it certainly didn't make sense in terms of, again, the high cost of energy, the high cost of things when you're an island.
Right.
When you're an island.
Well, I remember very pointedly your conversations with the National Park Service about opening a second road, right, on St. John so that people could not be cut off on one end of the island to the other. Really recognizing that federal nexus and how important that was. And your, very pointed questions to our Water and Power Authority about energy, really pressing them about what they were doing and what they would do with the money to ensure that Virgin Islanders are getting good energy. And, during the time after the storm and we were writing legislation, you were really instrumental in changing the language of the law, the Stafford Act, because prior to that, you allowed us to have prudent replacement instead of the standard 50% rule, approve a replacement of badly damaged facilities. And that provision has allowed us to continue to build not as things were at the time of the storm, but how things should be. And it's really been a great boon to us to try and reimagine how the Virgin Islands is supposed to be. And now our problem is we have so much construction going on and trying to create a workforce to meet that construction. And I know that was really your leadership really driving that, from the position even as the minority leader at the time. And so you really made sure that your power and your authority and your leadership was exerted. I saw the documentary that your daughter did about you, and I was really struck about your strategic thinking and how you negotiate and how dogged you are in the negotiation. And you said something in the documentary about whoever gets tired first kind of loses in the negotiations. Where did you learn that? And has that something you picked up all along, or was there one or another mentor that really provided that kind of guidance for you? Where'd that come from?
Well, nice to mention that I didn't know what was going to be in the documentary, so I watched it sitting on the edge of my seat. What I said is you cannot tire. You cannot tire. Now, that's fundamental. But I learned a lot of that from our friends in the labor movement because they're engaged in negotiations all the time, and I have been engaged with them in my own district in San Francisco in all kinds of negotiations. And you cannot tire. You know, sometimes when you're in a negotiation, you'll say, "Oh well, let's just settle for this." No, you have to take it to the strongest possible place. You have to negotiate, yes. You have to respect compromise and the rest, but you cannot fold too soon. But mostly, in my working with our friends in labor, that was what I got from them mostly.
When you go into a negotiation, do you know at the beginning what your bottom line is going to be, or has it ever moved?
Well, let me just say, in any success that we have had in the Congress on legislation, whether it's the Affordable Care Act, the Rescue Package, the RA, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, or infrastructure legislation, whatever it is, I give credit to our members, the courage they have to vote for these things. By and large, most of this has been mostly just Democratic votes. Certainly the Affordable Care Act was, the Rescue Package. We had 13 votes on the infrastructure bill, and we were glad, Republican votes, we're glad for that, but without the courage of the Democrats, because the people who are voting against the bill were mischaracterizing it in our members. It's easy for me, from my district, but not for them. So let me pay tribute to the House Democrats for their courage in all of this. And our position springs from our caucus. We have people say to me, "Oh, you unify them." No, I don't. Our values unify them. And our prevailing value is America's working families. That's what we're here for. That's what the Democratic Party, opportunity for America's working families. So, so our position springs from the consensus in our caucus, which is values-based and unifying. I always say to them, our unity is our strength. No, our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power. And we can go as far as that unity will enable us to go.
That's really very great. You know, you talked about Phil Burton, from San Francisco, your predecessor, who, as you rightly said, did a really great deal for the territories in the Insular Areas Act, which provided us relief and support in many areas, recognizing the differences that we have. And certainly you have continued that. He was, of course, on the Natural Resources Committee, and so was directly front and center with that. And you have purview over the entire country, and in many instances negotiating around the world, whether you're going to Taiwan or you are at the G6 or other places where you have done that. How do you have such a wide authority and people around the world that are need your support, and still able to focus on small places like the U.S. Virgin Islands? How do you juggle that?
Well, it's about our purpose. You know, as I always say to people, if you want to be involved in all this, know why. Why you want to be here. It's about our values. And our security of our country is first and foremost what we take an oath to protect and defend.
Right.
So the global role is very important. Now, I'm the first leader in decades, so nobody even can go back far enough to find anybody, who came to the leadership with a security credential, 30 years in altogether in intelligence, 20 years by the time I became Speaker and the rest. So a long time with that. And that's really important to our role in the world in terms of our values, but also the security of our people. So that's an important part of it. But a major responsibility, of course, is the well-being of the American people. So again, we have blessed with members who have interest globally or interest locally. Everybody is local because that's who we represent, but some spend more time globally, and it's important. It's important in terms of security, it's important in terms of our economy, and it's important in terms of our values, in terms of a world at peace, so that our children can thrive. As we see right now with Ukraine, democracy is at stake.
Yes.
The Ukrainians are fighting very hard for their democracy, but for ours as well. We cannot let autocracy prevail in that fight. That's important to us.
You know, throughout the Caribbean, China is getting a larger foothold with providing funding, I believe at usury rates, of loans to Caribbean countries, or creating infrastructure. I don't think necessarily the strongest infrastructure, or even with local workers. How do we as Americans get more engaged in that region? And how do we thwart what I think is, you know, it serves an immediate need, but the long-term detriment of being so tied to China?
Well, this is our hemisphere, and we should be, again, in friendship. Not when I was a student, I was at the inauguration of John F. Kennedy. You probably weren't born yet, but I was at the and in his speech, everybody in the world knows he said, "The citizens of America ask not what America can do for you, but what you can do for your country."
Yes.
Students learn that in school. It's history to them. It was my youth. The very next sentence in the speech, which just took me and it continues to, he said, "To the citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind." And he was a leader in our hemispheric initiatives and the rest at the time. We have to recognize that it's not with any condescension, this is how I think you should do it. It's about listening to people working together for the freedom of mankind. Now, the Chinese don't do this because they're altruistic or unselfish. They do it because they want the votes of these countries at
the UN and
the
other
UN, global bodies, to vote with them to the detriment of human rights, the environment, and other priorities for us. So I've been watching this for decades, even long before I was even in leadership. When I was on appropriations and the top Democrat on our funding for global cooperation, and I could see what they were doing. They were buying up ports.
Yes.
Panama Canal, they have more ownership than they should. Down to Montevideo, into Uruguay. Any a substantial waterway they were setting down all over the world, but in our hemisphere. So it's really important that we, again, don't assume that people understand that we're all in this hemisphere. We're all Americans, North and South, Central,
the Americas.
But that we have to demonstrate that more clearly. And again, as you indicated, the Chinese come in with usurious rates, interest rates, bringing many times Chinese workers, so it doesn't even create jobs in the area, and then use these countries to their advantage. I think that American people have to understand that we have a global role in peace and in saving the planet and so many other challenges that we have, and we just can't complain about the Chinese. We have to listen to the countries as to what is in their interest and ours as well.
That's excellent. Just switching gears a little bit and talking about something that you worked on when you were the speaker was the Inflation Reduction Act, right? And as we know, IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, makes historic investments in reducing energy costs. And I know in San Francisco, you have high energy costs, larger than many other. The rate is higher than other places. The Virgin Islands, of course, has an extremely high rate, along with also having right now a closed oil refinery. And so we are looking at how do we lower the cost of energy so that businesses are incentivized to come to us, so that people are not spending most of their income on energy and can use it in other ways. You talk about working families. How did you foresee, or what is your vision for how we as Americans can utilize the Inflation Reduction Act?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act to me is really a giant step forward. I would have hoped that it would have had, while it does reduce the cost of prescription drugs, I would have hoped that it had more care economy initiatives in it, but that's our unfinished business as we go forward, whether it's child care, child tax credit, things that we originally had in that legislation. But for what it is, Inflation Reduction Act, it does reduce inflation. It does reduce the national debt. It has funds to do that. But it more importantly has investments using tax credits in terms of public-private partnerships and the rest to reduce emissions, which are a health issue for our children, but also give other, shall we say, reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. So it has other options. So you're not at the mercy of what somebody might charge. You're entrepreneurial in creating your own environment as to what is there. The cost of energy impacts small business, big business too, families and
Communities.
the communities, the communities. And it is something that I feel very hopeful that this legislation will go a long way in reducing. I mean, even Hawaii, not a territory, but an island, high cost. A high cost of energy as well. And it's not just the cost of financially, it's the cost to more kids having asthma and the rest if we're dependent on strictly on fossil fuels and not moving to lower cost. And these alternatives, these renewables, you can get to a place where homes are selling back energy that they're not using to the system, because they have utilized the opportunity that is there. And it's a big change. It will happen. We just want to shorten the distance between what we think is inevitable and other people think is inconceivable, shorten the distance between the two, so that decisions can be made on the merits and are not held hostage to the cost of energy.
As the leader of the Democrats for a long period of time now, you've negotiated not just with other members on the other side of the aisle, but sometimes also with against presidents, or even your own presidents, right? When you have disagreements, what lessons can you give us about negotiating with presidents or individuals that seem to have the majority of the power when you walk into the room, or even someone who's of your same party that you want to be on the same page with, but you don't always agree with?
Well, we have to respect people's views. We all represent different areas. We have different priorities, and how we present our case will justify how we prevail in a debate. So we have to, again, be respectful, but also have what is our vision in this negotiation? What is it that we hope to achieve? What do we know about the subject matter? What do we have in terms of strategic thinking about how we get it done? So that we go to the table ready and prepared. And that's really important. For example, right now, we're dealing with the debt ceiling, lifting the debt. And in the 20 years that I was leader or speaker, I had 19 encounters of the debt ceiling kind. 19. 3 of them during the previous president, most recent previous president, who shall remain nameless. But they're 3 times. And it wasn't about, this is the right thing to do for our country.
Right.
We have to lift the debt ceiling. What are we talking about here? You don't want our president, because he's a Democrat, to have a victory. When President Obama was president, we had to deal with and sometimes during that time, a Republican majority that did not want to lift the debt ceiling, and even the discussion of it lowered our credit rating. Just the thought that they might not do it.
And it might not
And
happen.
eventually we achieved what we wanted to achieve. But it is, again, I always talk about President Lincoln. He said public sentiment is everything. With it you can accomplish anything, almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. And so the public has to weigh in on this. And for the public sentiment to prevail, people have to know. So you're not just at that table, you're conveying to the American people what is at stake for them. You're at that negotiating table, they're at their kitchen table. What does this mean at their kitchen table in terms of their cost of living, in terms of decisions that they have to make about their future? And some of them are economic, mostly all of them are economic, but some of them are about personal freedoms, like a woman's right to choose, which is an economic issue at that kitchen table and is a freedom issue. So when people see what is at stake and what it means, not at the negotiating table, but at the kitchen table, then we have because we would like to think that we all have shared values, but that isn't always the case when it comes to the other side these days.
Well, we were talking about negotiating with your colleagues, speaking on their behalf, speaking with presidents. I want to ask you just personally, you know, you have had to juggle not just this job, but a really successful marriage and children and grandchildren all at the same time. How do you negotiate that?
I always say to the members, keep the home fires burning. That is your strength. That means everything. At the end of the day, the politics may come to an end, but your responsibility to your family are so ongoing.
Right.
I myself now am very grateful to the kind remarks we've received about the assault that was made on my husband's life, coming very close. Well, he loves you, you know, that's so much respect.
Well, you know, we love each other, and we, of course, have our Georgetown
connection. That's how you started this friendship, the Georgetown, the Hoya connection. But it is really important. At a recent event in New York with Hakeem Jeffries, our new leader, somebody said to me, "What are you instructing him in any way about how to juggle all of this?" And I said to him yesterday, the answer to that question is, I'm not teaching him anything, but my kids are. They're of his generation, and they have things they want him to know about family and the rest and all of this. People ask me, what does emerita mean? I said it means happiness. We have great leadership. I'm so proud of Hakeem and Catherine and Pete Aguilar and Ted Lieu and our new leadership. And I just want them to serve in the majority, so that's part of my focus now, is to make sure that they do pretty soon.
Well, I love seeing you on the floor in your California area, and, you know, different leaders going to you and coming to you for advice, and you're always there to support all of us. And I know that the people of the Virgin Islands have been grateful for you in the positions that you have and the continued position and the voice that you have in our country. And I want to thank you for being that leader, but also thank Paul and thank all of your children and your grandchildren for allowing us, for sharing you with us, so that you can make the impact that you have made, not just on your generation and mine, but as you always say, for the children. And you've done that for all of us going forward. So I'm really grateful, and thank you for spending some time with us here. And I look forward to your continued service throughout the years.
Well, I appreciate your saying that, but I accept every compliment on behalf of the House Democrats, whose courage made so much possible over time, and yours as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that wraps this up for this edition of the Washington Report. Thank you for joining us. Speaker Pelosi, it was an honor to have you, and thank you for taking the time today. To all my Virgin Islanders, if you have anything that you'd like to present to us, you can send it to askstacy@mail.house.gov. And please remember stay VI strong, and have a great day. Much love.
Oh, oh, oh.